that way is very much like out of the box.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, like, it's so cool to hear that. Like when, like in an era where everybody's just like on Serum and whatever Massive, whatever else there is out there. It's so cool that you're just literally analog. You really are like just like a full on like multi instrumentalist. Like that's really the heart and soul of what you do. I think
it definitely helps.
It definitely helps.
Yeah, like I said, like growing up playing guitar and violin and cello and stuff. Like I'm not really a piano player. I never have been. I know where C is, so I can just find things. But I guess the other thing. Sorry, I should have said this during the classical thing. I grew up playing violin, but learned Suzuki, which is all like ear training. So that is sort of the biggest help. I can just sort of, play along to a song, especially with the Silverstein stuff. A lot of that didn't have any keys or synth. So they would just say, if you're not playing the violin part that's on the record, just, I don't know, do something cool. Fill out the sound for us. Make a nice pad.
That's awesome. When you're on tour with Silverstein, are you using like string patches, or is it mostly synth based?
So the first couple years I had the Rev 2 out with me, so it was a lot of like big wobbly pad stuff, like a lot more subtle things. But this last tour that we just did, I brought the OB6 out because I thought that'd be fun, and I did a lot of like unison bass stuff. And it just sounds so big.
Yeah, that's the Rush sound, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like the beginning of Tom Sawyer. Yep. So cool. Yeah, that's amazing, man. What if you, for artists or producers looking to kind of get into, getting their own actual analog keyboards, like what would be a good place to start that's not too expensive, that is easy to kind of wrap your head around and kind of get started, fiddling knobs?
I would say a Juno, but the prices of those things lately are absolutely insane. The Juno's just laid out so nicely. Just like every sort of section of the synth is labeled right in front of you. Really simple. But the price is rough now. So I would say the Prophet, the Rev 2 or the 08 is the sort of earlier version of it. Fantastic sounding synth. Digitally controlled oscillator, so it's an analog synth, digitally controlled, which does make it great for touring. Like it's just rock solid. You can get, with the Rev 2, you can get as deep as you want, I've kind of found. You can just flip through patches and find cool stuff, or, it's sort of a monster under the hood. You can get into some pretty weird territory with it. Yeah, great for getting started or really, really learning synthesis.
Wow, sounds like a great piece. No plug, like nobody's getting any cash off of this, but yeah, that's cool, man. And yeah, like I don't know, synthesis is badass. Like I've delved into it a little bit, but like clearly not anywhere nearly as deep as you have. Like I know kind of how to set enough parameters on like I don't know any synth to kind of
get what you're going for,
shape it from a preset. But I'm not like I've never been able to make like a preset on a wavetable synth or anything like that.
Fair.
But maybe one day.
It's real nerdy,
but there are
it's
people
fun.
that are so good at that. You know what I mean? There are people that are sound designers, and it's just like it sounds like that's partially what you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely sort of what this has evolved into.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about your studio. Like, where is your studio located? I'm assuming you're doing all your sessions in there, vocals and everything, same place?
Pretty much. So I've got a couple spaces I work out of. Right now, like I'm just at my home studio, which I've kind of got everything in right now. I have been splitting a room. Actually, last year I was splitting a room with Chris Corellia for a while. So we're out in the beaches in Toronto. And same thing, just a sort of small room, do everything, bring a couple synths, bring a couple guitars, full production. And then the way Chris had built it up, the whole thing was pretty much an ISO booth. So you just set up a mic beside me and we're kind of off. At home, I've got this little closet ISO booth situation going on, which works really well. But now I've been splitting a room with Bowman at a different spot in Toronto.
At
Carvalho's?
What's it called? Cavallo, yeah.
So I was splitting with him for the last little while, and I'm going to be taking it over in March. And same thing, just a small single little room. You do everything in there from vocals to, the full production.
So you're taking over. He's moving into his house.
Yeah.
So you're taking over the entire space now.
Yes.
Basically, or you're taking it out in full time. Basically.
Full time. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Now that you're going to have a crying kid, you need to vacate.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about energy and feeling creative and fresh. Like we all have days where we're not feeling it, and obviously we have days where we are feeling it. How do you kind of keep yourself, having that routine of just feeling creative every day and being able to work on the things you do?
I think working on so many different projects and different kinds of projects really helps with that. Like flipping between, a folk record and then a pop thing and then, like a band production. It's fun to just be able to switch my brain into a lot of different kind of vibes. Yeah, that sort of just keeps it interesting for me. Or if I get a little too burnt out on a song and I'm like obsessing over a kick drum, it's like, all right, what? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to flip over to this other thing, do a little bit of like vocal production stuff instead.
Nice. Do you have any habits that you do to kind of keep yourself fresh? Like maybe it's like meditation or running or anything like that.
I don't. I should. I definitely get into a routine of just like working myself crazy. Like I used to work pretty much 7 days a week, crazy hours. There's definitely been stretches where I've, gone to Toronto or the old studio for like, I don't know, say 10 in the morning, do a 12-hour day, like sleep on a couch in the studio for a couple hours and start a night session. I try not to do that so much anymore, especially now that I have a baby. I don't plan on doing much of that. But I really don't have any sort of set routine. I would like to start something that kind of keeps that schedule a little more regular. I just haven't found it yet.
It sounds like you don't need it. Like you're the kind of guy that just gets on a plane and says, like, let's see if we can get into the studio
it's worked so far.
In Reading. Like I don't know. Like I'm like, they talk about like order versus chaos or whatever, and I'm like, I'm so averse to chaos that everything in my life has to be orderly. But like, I'm kind of like, the grass is maybe always greener, but like, I don't know, like, damn, imagine if I could like embrace chaos so well and just be like, okay, like it's hard for me as like an organized person to deal with the fact that, working in music is just so irregular. And then like, vocalists might not be having a good day. You can't record vocals now. Okay, cool. Like, let's do something else. Like that's like, changing of the schedule is tough for me. So
that's fair.
I don't know. I think it's like, it seems like maybe it's like a superpower you have, like whatever, this is going to be great. Like we're just going to keep working and,
that's it.
Whatever.
I like my sessions are organized, but that's kind of where it stops. I usually let my room turn into fucking chaos until I'm like, yeah, you know what? I should probably dust or wrap some cables today.
Right. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
in the room at least.
Yep.
Luckily, the camera can't see what's going on below, right below where my hands are pointed.
Nice, yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat over here.
Nice. Are you monitoring on headphones? You have working through speakers. What does your monitoring situation look like?
NS10s. I'm like purely NS10s. Yeah, NS10s and a little sub, but it's just kind of what I've used forever. I've looked into getting. Actually, both Josh and Chris use the same ATCs. And I've been thinking about getting those because I've listened to them in a few different spots between both of those guys having them now. And I do really like how they translate. But also, I just love my NS10s. Like, I used them at Outhouse. I used them at school. I've used them for years.
Yeah. People like, it's like, if you're using NS10s, like, it's legit,
That's
People
it.
have been using them since the 80s, right?
They sound terrible and they work.
They sound terrible and they work. Yeah, I just had a conversation with Dan Silberman, who I had on the show also a while back, but also coming up soon. And he was like, "Yo, don't get focals. It's all about the NS10 kind of thing." And I ended up getting focals, and I'm really happy.
Yeah,
I like hearing. For me, like I don't think I could work on NS10s because I think I would work too hard on like the mid range, and I feel like having a very balanced image really helps me kind of just understand what's going to actually translate. I don't know.
Right.
But,
yeah.
To each their own.
It kind of comes down to,
I guess you're not as
your
focused
stuff.
on mixing as I am, but, you still have to hear what your sounds are going to sound like,
Definitely. Like it comes down to what you know, what you're familiar with. You can kind of make work for yourself.
And in terms of like mastering, do you have like a hand in who chooses the mastering, or is it the artist you're working with, the mixing engineer? Like how, like I know you work with Connor a lot, and like I do also.
Yeah.
Like who chooses the mastering engineer?
It's a bit of a mix. Some artists have guys that they've just used forever. A lot of the time, if it's me, I use Connor. But, different mixing guys also have different people that they work with for different sounding projects. So I kind of leave it fairly open. The artists generally, for the most part, from what I've seen, don't really care.
Yeah, I find I have to educate artists often and be like, no, you do want to pay for mastering.
Oh, definitely.
Like I don't know, like it's like such a worthwhile extra expense. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. There's not so much convincing. It's just like, yeah, you have a guy, of course, send it to that guy. It's going to be louder. It's going to be done. Love it.
Yeah, totally. And I know that like, we've talked about like, actually tactile things and synthesizers and stuff. Is there anything in the box that you find is completely like you couldn't live without that like helps you cross the finish line with your productions?
Ooh. I get like utility stuff wise, obviously the Fab Filter, everything is great. So easy, so intuitive.
The best.
I can't remember if it was on your podcast. Did you interview Matt Snell?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay. I listened to that and he was talking about the black box, that Plugin Alliance black box one. And ever since I heard about that, I have also had that on every master, every like 808, every drum bus. That thing is magic.
Sick. It's amazing.
It's
same here, by the way. Yeah. Just since I spoke with Matt Snell also.
I think I was
literally.
I was in the studio with him like the week that came out. And I was like, hey, tell me about this black box. But yeah, it's been on absolutely everything.
I think everyone's using it. Like almost like everybody I'm talking to is like big on it.
It's just
like
the better maker. It's just good. Every time you turn it on, you're like, yeah, it's more exciting. It's more full. Everything just is better.
And you're printing all that stuff out like for mixing, right? Like it's getting printed in.
Yeah. Generally, if I have mixed everything, the only thing I'm taking off before I send to like Connor or mastering is my like limiter at the end, which hopefully isn't doing a whole lot. But otherwise, yeah, everything on my actual tracks, I'm committing to, aside from maybe a vocal reverb or something. I tend to buy things that are fun. I like things that are creative and, like a synth or an instrument. I 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with something like that as opposed to, a preamp or, something else that maybe I should be buying.
I think that's totally legit though. Like, right? Like
something that's more inspiring.
If you're inspired by your instruments, then you're going to do better stuff.
Exactly. Something that, you're going to play differently and you're going to create differently and something new is going to come out of it. And I do the same thing with plugins. Like I have a lot of weird, like stuttery plugins or, tape emulating things or distortions or weird bit crushers. A lot of freaky modulation stuff. And I've been using a ton of that stuff, as I go in, especially with stuff like guitar. Actually, the Cindy song, like that guitar is really warbly and tapey. And that's just a whole weird chain of, freaky modulation and like a little bit of lo-fi stuff out. None of that's...
Yeah, and that's in the box, right? That's not those aren't like pedals.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. But like a lot of my plugins that I have that I use regularly are just like weird lo-fi modulate-y shit. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I feel like also because you're like such a musician, like at your core, like Pro Tools is the obvious like duh. It's like you're not like trying to like let Ableton like guide the musicality. You're kind of just committing to it even on outside the box and just using it out almost as like a tape machine to kind of just like
pretty much, yeah.
capture your ideas.
Like that's the other thing too is I've used Pro Tools for so long. I know it. I know my key commands. At the beginning of the pandemic, when things were first like, don't leave your house, everything's scary. I downloaded Ableton twice and Logic once, thinking, I'm going to learn a new DAW. And at the time, another producer that I was in the same building with, he just kept telling me how like terrible Pro Tools is and how Ableton's the only thing you should use.